Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has flagged off his and his party's most ambitious comeback effort yet. The Bharat Jodo Yatra that began today will see Rahul Gandhi and top Congress leaders traverse 12 states, 2 union territories, 20 cities and 3,570 kilometers over the next 150 days. It begins in Kanyakumari and will end in Srinagar early next year. The Padyatris will walk in 2 shifts between 7 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. and the second shift will be between 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. in the evening. They will be living in containers during this time. At the start of this event, Rahul Gandhi said this yatra is an attempt to unite the country against divisive forces.
BJP thinks that they can divide this country. They can divide this country along religious lines. They can divide this country along its languages. This country cannot be divided. Today, India faces its worst ever economic crisis. Highest level of unemployment that we have ever seen. Fortunately, our friends in the media are fully controlled. On the television, you will never see unemployment. You will never see price rise. You will only see the image of the Prime Minister.
राहुल जी भारत जोड़ो यात्रा पर निकले। कभी कभी बड़ा आश्चर्य भी होता है, जो अपनी पार्टी को जोड़ नहीं सके वो भारत जोड़ने निकले, और जो अपने को अपनी पार्टी से भी नहीं जोड़ सके वो भारत जोड़ो की यात्रा पर निकले। याद है ना, कांग्रेस में एक दरबारी गायन होता है, राहुल जी को फिर अध्यक्ष बनाओ, फिर अध्यक्ष बनाओ। वो कहते हैं मैं नहीं बनूंगा, और बीच में विदेश यात्रा पर चले जाते हैं।
Now, while Rahul Gandhi is focusing on the message of unity, the big question is whether the Bharat Jodo Yatra will rejuvenate his party. A major election for Congress president, and that position is due, and Mr. Gandhi will be on this yatra while that is being conducted. That's an important exercise because it will determine the leadership and the direction of the party. The exodus of top leaders from the party, meanwhile, continues. Ghulam Nabi Azad is the latest, and the biggest challenge remains to enthuse the Congress cadre. The yatra as a tool is a big question over whether it will help. Now, the yatra has been used by other parties and other leaders before in the past. In 1983, Janata Party Bharat Yatra was conducted. It was 4,260 kilometers long, and party chief Chandra Shekhar actually took part and led that yatra. He subsequently lost the 1984 Lok Sabha post but did become Prime Minister in 1990 with Congress's support. The all-famous 1990s BJP Ram Rath Yatra conducted by L.K. Advani. It was 10,000 kilometers from Somnath to Ayodhya. And it got the BJP handsome rewards. They won 120 Lok Sabha seats in 1991. They had won 85 seats in 1989 and emerged the single largest party in 1996 with 161 Lok Sabha seats. In 2003, another very famous yatra which yielded handsome results. YSRCP Praja Prasathanam yatra took place. It was a 1,500-kilometer yatra by Dr. Y.S.R. Reddy across undivided Andhra Pradesh. The party won 185 seats in 2004 and had won 91 seats in 1999. That's the Andhra Pradesh state polls. And they eventually swept those polls and he was sworn in as Chief Minister. In 2012, TDP's leader, Chandrababu Naidu, also held a yatra across undivided AP. He won 102 seats in 2014 polls and had won 92 in the previous state polls. He was sworn in as Chief Minister eventually as well. In 2017, the Narmada Parikrama was conducted by Digvijay Singh. It was a 3,300-kilometer yatra by the Congress General General Secretary at that time in Madhya Pradesh. And the party did do much better in the subsequent polls as well. Another YSRCP Praja Sankalp Yatra of 2,648 kilometers was undertaken by Jagan Reddy, the current Chief Minister, across 13 districts in Andhra Pradesh. He won 151 seats in 2019 and won 67 seats in 2014. So it's worked in some cases, it's not worked in others. The big question here is, will Bharat Jodo Yatra revive the Congress's fortunes? Will the Congress revival now rest on opposition unity? Because remember, even while this yatra is going on, Mr. Nitish Kumar has been making a number of visits to senior leaders in Delhi. He met Sharad Pawar today. So how big a role will opposition unity play in this? It was interesting that Mr. Stalin helped flag off the yatra today. Should Rahul first focus on Congress Jodo, as many of his critics are saying? And is this also a way to revive Rahul Gandhi as head of the Congress party once again, even though he keeps saying he doesn't want to run for Congress president? To speak on some of these aspects, I'm joined today by Sanjay Jha. I'm speaking with Aishwarya Mahadev, spokesperson of the Congress party, Tuhin Sinha, spokesperson of the BJP, and Sandip Ghose, author, is also joining us on the show. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. Aishwarya, let me begin with your take. What does your party hope to achieve with this yatra?
Good evening, Tamanna. I think first and foremost, the mission of the Bharat Jodo Yatra is for the Congress leadership and everybody in the Congress party to get to the ground and reconnect with the grassroots, to hear out what they have to say, what are their issues, and what are the aspirations of the people along this path that the Congress party can look into when it comes to the future. I think for us, the entire idea of Bharat Jodo is very critical to us because, you know, the BJP today has been talking about India is not divided, India is not broken, all of that. But you see the lines of divisions on caste, creed, you know, states, language, the sort of divides today are unprecedented compared to what has previously been there. And I think for us, the idea is for Congress to come together to hear out what the people want, listen to what listen to what people's aspirations are. And it's not just man ki baat from the leadership, rather we want to sit and discuss and hear from the people itself. And for us, I think we'll be very successful.
Aishwarya, was there a sense, Aishwarya, and of course I'll get responses from everyone around, but was there a sense within the party that you've lost connect with the ground, you've lost connect with voters, and subsequent defeats in various elections, the fleeing of senior leaders is sort of underlying that? And was there a sense that you needed to reconnect? Is this also a revival yatra for the Congress party?
You know, to be very honest, I think a lot of people would like to write off the Congress party as being very disconnected. But I think for us, this is the first time that you see leadership from across traversing the length and breadth only to actually have a genuine conversation with the people. And, you know, whether this is a revival or not is something that you can come to see. But the Congress party stands very firm in its ideology. We stand very firm in what we're dedicated to. And we want to hear the people today. This is not one of those recon or at least try and refix something that's gone wrong. This is rather for Rahul Gandhi ji to traverse the length and breadth in order to understand the various dynamics. And for example, you know, when YSR did his rally, it's not like, or his yatra, not like he was particularly unpopular or out of sorts or out of favor. He did it because he wanted to reconnect massively, to understand, because the demography of our country is such that you will see so much diversity that I think it's absolutely necessary for any leader or any person that wants to indulge in being in office to have such a grassroots connect. And I think that is what the Congress party...
So Tuhin, why is the BJP, you know, hitting out at the Congress today for this? They're a political party. They have a right to reconnect with their voters and their voter base. Why all of these jibes that this is a Rahul renewal attempt and a, you know, Parivar, renewal attempt? Let them do what they want to do.
Well, good evening, Tamanna. First of all, Congress has a very abysmal track record when it comes to Bharat Jodo. In the late 1970s and 1980s, they fomented trouble in Punjab and then Kashmir, first by indulging with Bhindranwale, and then, you know, the 1986 pact between Rajiv Gandhi and Farooq Abdullah, which paved the way for militancy and all the bloodbath in the valley. But in the last 8 years, look at what Rahul Gandhi has done. He has vitiated the atmosphere first by, bad-mouthing Veer Savarkar unnecessarily and making it our freedom fighters versus your freedom fighters. When he travels to Assam, he badmouths businessmen from Gujarat. When he travels to Kerala, he badmouths North Indians. After 2008 Mumbai blast, he was allegedly, in the US embassy, he's supposed to have made a statement that Hindu extremists are the biggest threat to the country. So, the personal credibility of Rahul Gandhi is so compromised today that, first of all, nobody takes the Bharat Jodo seriously. Second, today the appearance of Robert Vadra on the posters tells a different story. If the yatra is successful, forget it. It may not even yield any benefit to the party. It will probably just help them further extend the control of the party and probably usher in the new league of Gandhis or Vadras into the party. That seems to be the core objective of the yatra at this point of time.
Bothering the BJP? If they're so irrelevant, you're saying they have no credibility. Why is it bothering the BJP?
Sorry?
Why is it bothering the BJP? If it's so irrelevant and they have no credibility, why is it bothering the BJP?
As a political party, we are exposing the sheer, the sheer hypocrisy. When it comes to what is Aishwarya not understanding by raising the hand? Today, if Rahul Gandhi is serious about this Bharat Jodo, the biggest threat to Bharat Jodo are the jihadi forces. Does he have the guts to speak against them? Does he have the guts to speak against what is happening in Jharkhand? In Jharkhand in the last 1 month.
Okay, Aishwarya, your quick response. Your quick response to what Tuhin is saying.
Women have been raped by a certain group of people.
1 minute, let her respond. She's been listening to you. She's been listening to you quietly. She was gesturing, but she didn't speak up when it was not her turn, so let her respond now. Yes, Aishwarya.
Tamanna, this is, I think, Tuhin's second or third show of the day, and I've heard the same line again and again, and very singularly, Tuhin, I think the fact of the matter...
Guys, it's all fresh for me. So let's stick to logic over here at 10:15 in the night. Yes.
But Tamanna, the fact of the matter remains that the BJP that tries to, basically downplay or try to write off Rahul Gandhi is still so bothered today that you get a Ravi Shankar Prasad to come talk about him. You see chief ministers of states trying to sit, and obviously, when Himanta Biswa Sarma has to do his time on Congress bashing because he's quite new to the BJP. But the fact remains that as much as you like to write him off, that he is still relevant to the people, and the BJP is just obviously frazzled by the fact that there is still resonance of the Congress party, and as much as they want to sit and have this this idea of Congress Mukt Bharat, that is not going to happen, and it shouldn't bother the Congress. They will sit and talk about history in the past. We know which chief minister came outside the Taj Hotel when what was happening and did a press conference. There's a lot that can be spoken of. The fact of the matter is, people of today in India do not have the same sort of agency, are obviously...
Aishwarya, can I ask you a question? If what exactly is Rahul Gandhi's role in heading this yatra and in your party? And I ask this in the context of you have a president election due soon. Rahul Gandhi saying he's not going to stand for it. He's not even going to be there, actually. He'll be on this yatra when that election is on. And he's made it clear he doesn't want to stand for that election. He doesn't want to technically lead that party. Then why is he leading this yatra? Isn't this a Congress effort and not just a Rahul Gandhi effort?
So first and foremost, Tamanna, I think the elections, I'd be very, very happy if Mr. Rahul Gandhi did contest, because I think with him is the mass resonance in the country, because as much as everybody tries to diminish it, there are millions in the Congress ecosystem today, me included, that I have an opportunity to sit on national television today because of the fact that he allowed youngsters like me to come in, one. And the second thing is, why is it Mr. Rahul Gandhi? Is because the Congress leadership, one, he has the mass resonance. When the Congress workers spoke about a yatra of the Congress party, the fact was that Mr. Rahul Gandhi taking the lead almost became the reason as a clarion call for people to rally behind him. You cannot negate the fact, as much as media, storerooms talk about how much he can be written off and whatnot, on the ground, his resonance is unparalleled. I come from Karnataka and I know how popular he is. And even if in the election path, Tamanna, it is going to happen side by side. The procedure is on. The PCCs have been informed of the procedure. You see the election officers, the returning officers, everybody doing their responsibility. The yatra singularly is an outreach effort to meet the people.
That's fine. That's fine. Sanjay Jha, can the yatra revive the Congress party? How do you look at it in terms of what it aims to do and how significant is it in their journey?
Well, Tamanna, I have been on a couple of shows, and I can tell you that the BJP is perceptibly rattled, if I can use the cliche of the day. And it's understandable, because let me tell you, any seasoned politician knows that in politics, things can change dramatically. There are no permanent winners, there are no permanent losers. And the mood of the electorate, things shift. And sometimes we don't see it, and then suddenly there is a cataclysmic collapse. So if the BJP is rattled today, I heard Tuhin, my good friend, get into this very acerbic assault of the Congress. I can understand. But there's a fact that cannot be ignored. And let me tell you what that is. That I think, people like a hardworking leader at home. If you look at the thread of all the yatras you have talked about, the time of Chandrasekhar, Vani, etc., you'll find that, they usually work because the upsides are more than the downsides. Because a leader is visible, a leader is seen amongst people, and that's exactly what Janta wants. And I think, that you inspire confidence. I mean, Aishwarya, one of the best spokespersons in the Congress party, I need to compliment her, pretty much transparent here. The cadres get motivated. Everyone is charged up. You like a fight. One of the reasons why I've been a little pissed with the Congress was because I said, what are you doing? You are giving it to the BJP on a silver platter. Fight back. And it's good to see these
This is a good fight back, Sanjay. This is a good fight back. This is a solid fight back in your view. Because everyone says the Congress never hits the street. They're hitting the streets.
They are hitting the street. Tamanna, let me tell you, there's a very interesting theme. And I do hope that the Congress reiterates this point, which is that I think Rahul Gandhi fleetingly mentioned it in his speech today, where he said that the British used the policy of divide and rule to rule India, and he hinted pretty much explicitly that the BJP is doing something very similar with the social polarization strategy. And I think if the Congress put a harp on this continuously, I think it will create a massive sense of support. Because, when you read about the incident that you were showing at the top of your program, actor Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt can't enter a temple. I'm like, what's going on in this country, for God's sake? I mean, Tuhin is, I think, a moderate BJP guy. And I'm sure I would love to hear his response. I mean, these are bizarre and outrageous and outlandish developments. And when I grew up in India, in the country that people left because, I just wanted to be here, I would have said, thinkable, but this is happening. The third point, which is very valid, and I think the Congress needs to recognize that while the Padyatra, in my opinion, has more upside and should be a good success, they should do more events, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The party should not take its eye on the big prize, which is Gujarat and then Himachal Pradesh.
Right.
You see, the party has to multitask. You have to get your elections
No,
done.
so okay, let me just we need to fix your audio a little bit, Sanjay. So let me go to Mr. Ghosh till then and just, get a sense about, now you've talked about 2-3 things, and one of them is Sanjay Jha believes, as I would say an ex-Congressee, that this yatra will help in enthusing the cadre. And things can change. Yatras can change things. Such big political sort of movements or attempts of outreach can change dynamics. Do you have that kind of optimism for the Congress party, Sandip?
I think, excuse me, I'll agree a long way with Sanjay as well as with Aishwarya and what they've spoken. I think that Yatra has a lot to commend for, and it has a lot of potential and possibilities. To that extent, I think BJP is acting too soon, trying to run it down, to be, cynical as well as, taking pot shots and the rest of it. I think that's neither called for. If they should wait for how it pans out, and that's too early reaction. But the problem with Congress, while I'm not going to be cynical, the issue is being skeptical, because they've got so many contradictions within the system, and that is what makes you wonder what this yatra is finally going to do. I have said in another show that I was personally very enthused by the Udaipur Chintan Shivir. But after that, what happened? there's nothing which was discussed there, what got actually translated. They formed two committees which became defunct almost. Rahul Gandhi carried on in his own way moving around. So you really don't know between what is being stated and what will actually happen in this yatra. There can be a big gulf. And so we have to wait and watch. There's 150 days going. If I were a Congress spokesperson, I wouldn't stick my neck out to say Rahul Gandhi will be present there for all 150 days. We know, his love for traveling abroad, his, loss of interest, consistency, all those things can happen. Now, whether, therefore, this Bharat Jodo you're talking about, the path. Bharat is not just one single line from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. There's a whole vast segment which you are missing.
Yeah, but Sandip, all yatras in that sense are symbolic. No political party claims to traverse every inch of the motherland.
But there are ways you can build it in. So when you're talking about a Gujarat being missed or a Himachal being missed, I totally agree. The logistics may not. But then what happens is people do something there. They come and converge with the main yatra. So I'm not getting into that nitty-gritty, but Tamanna, what you raise, what is this yatra for? I quite like what
I'll get Aishwarya to respond because Sandip Ghose sometimes delivers the most, I would say, snide jibes in a very sophisticated way. So Aishwarya Sandip Ghose today is saying that you should not stick your neck out as a Congress spokesperson and say Rahul Gandhi will be there for 150 days because he might just lose interest.
No, just one more minute, Tamanna. I will give him the benefit of doubt on all those things. But what you said in terms of the purpose, whether this yatra gets converted into a Rahul launch episode, when Aishwarya is saying, I'm very encouraged to hear that they are going to listen to people. But who are the people around him? Whether those people are more concerned about making Rahul's journey comfortable? The 117 people who are accompanying him, what is their stature? Do they have the capacity to listen? All these are factors which will come into play.
Okay, and let her respond. Let her respond. Yeah, Aishwarya?
Tamanna, I think you give Mr. Sandip Ghose far more credit for his sophistication on what he said, because I think right here, I think a lot of it is very misguided in the manner in which he talks about Mr. Rahul Gandhi's commitment to this, because I can tell you, and I've seen the route map, I've had conversations with the leadership that has traversed from all our states. I'm from Karnataka. He is in my state for 22 days. I know the exact length and breadth of where he's going in my state, what communities he's meeting. From Gundlapet to Raichur, I can tell you exactly the sort of communities, the underserved and also the marginalized and people all across that he wants to converse with. Yatris that are with him. I can tell you that my state, my leadership, Mr. D.K. Shivkumar, can bring in lakhs and lakhs of people to walk with him. But he has requested for only the Pradesh Yatris and the Bharat Yatris to be there to act as a bridge when he converses. Gundlapet is one of those spots of some of the most tribal communities that are completely underserved because they're in the middle of the forest. As he traverses across Nagmangla to Tumkur to Raichur and Bellary, you see he's cutting across the length and breadth of my state as well. And I know this is happening everywhere else. And to try and take away for whatever anybody may say about Mr. Rahul Gandhi, I have never heard of anybody doubting his sincerity to the people, whether it is the issues, whatever it may be, whether it is COVID, whether it is GST, whether it is the farm. I think his commitment has been unwavering. Mr. Sandip Ghose, much like a lot of other people, would like to talk about the fact that he will take off here, he will take off there. Absolutely not, sir. You can view this entire Padyatra for every single day, and you will realize the days where there are breaks are because, for example, in my state, Dasara is a very big festival. There are certain days where, owing to the sentiments of the state, there have been breaks that have been taken. Otherwise, Mr. Rahul Gandhi would have walked entirely. And this is 20 kilometers a day, meeting people and conversing, and this is not with an entire mass. You realize the first half of the day is him only conversing with people of interest of those societies and those areas. And we will walk with him. We have made sure he can reach out to people and along with the leadership.
What do you see, Tuhin, as the outcome of this outreach?
Tamanna,
no, Tuhin, the question to Tuhin, who Sanjay Jha has described as the corporate BJP spokesperson. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, Tuhin. I leave that to your...
Only one with a job, to be honest.
I leave that to your discretion. Whether you're being praised or, you know,
I
not
heard it
right
the
now.
first time,
But
so maybe
what do you think will come out of this yatra, and is the BJP worried?
did you coin it? Because I've heard it the first time, though.
No, Sanjay Jha just said it. He's called you the corporate BJP spokesperson.
Employed.
See, the point is the issues raised by Rahul Gandhi don't strike a chord with the people. Now, you are a business journalist. I'm sure you follow the inflation figures and the price, the entire economy very closely. You know for a fact that for most part of the second half of UPA 2, the inflation figures were well in excess of 10%. As against that, in a year when you've had a prolonged Russia-Ukraine war, if we have managed to restrict the retail inflation figures to less than 7%, I think that is an extraordinary achievement.
But
Fact,
Tuhin, since I'll let you complete, Tuhin, but since you've asked specifically, I assume for my view, people who have to pay what they can't afford don't care that they had to pay even more several years ago. If someone can't afford something today, if someone finds the prices of LPG cylinders very high today, they're not going to say, "To kya hua? UPA mein humko aur bhi paise dene pad rahe hain." You know that as well.
At the same time, the cost of data, while its usage may have increased by 10 times, is actually 1/4 of what it used to be 2012, 2013.
No, your point being that inflation is no longer a political issue. I would differ with you that it's no longer a political issue.
Are you trying to say that one needs to forcibly confine the price figures to what it was to 2014 levels? And do we know the repercussions of that to our economy?
No, you're conflating two different things, Tuhin. You started by saying inflation was higher in UPA days. Are you trying to say it does not matter today as a political issue?
No, we have shielded the people in other ways. If 80 crore people have been given free ration for the last 2.5 years throughout the worst of COVID months, there are a lot of other ways in which we have shielded the poor and the needy. And at the same time, you know that at a time when the European markets, when the Chinese markets have tanked, ours is the only market which is looking up. So there are all the positive indicators of the economy, and there are people most of the people don't take Rahul Gandhi seriously when he keeps cribbing about our economic downfall and all. So number one, there is a lack of credibility. What he says cannot be factually corroborated. But secondly, like I said, we have attained Bharat Jodo with 3 days of Har Ghar Tiranga. Crores and crores of people raised the flag for the first time. Where is the need for a Bharat Jodo at this point of time?
But in a democracy, how can they be questioned? They have a right to reach out to voters. Don't opposition parties have a right to reach out to voters?
I'm not questioning. They have every right to waste their time. But at the end of it, the Bharat Jodo doesn't gel with their basic character or nature. That is what I'm trying to say.
Aishwarya, your response.
Tamanna, he'll talk about these 3 days of Har Ghar Tiranga where you gave us Chinese flags and also the fact that you were withholding rations for the poorest of the poor if they did not buy your flags. So let's not go on that. They will talk about the economy and so
uncorroborated claims
today. But the fact is during UPA we were third, so you now brought us to the fifth. And the fact of the matter also remains that whether it's wholesale price inflation, whether you look at GST taxing on common goods, that the economy today is worse than ever before. And you may look at aggregate numbers, but the people of this country are suffering. Whether it is unemployment, whether it is GST, whether it's widespread corruption. And to be honest, my state is one of those massive victims of the same. And I think for him, he still cannot tell you. They will try to say Rahul Gandhi is not relevant, but they are still shook enough to have every Tom, Dick and Harry of the BJP come and talk to you about how this yatra is not important. If it wasn't anything that resonated, if it didn't bother you, why are you even responding? This is an activity of the
outcomes
Congress
that can be expected. I think we've spent enough time with one side saying it's very, very crucial, the other saying that it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, whether it worked or not, needs to be measured in some fashion. Sanjay Jha, what is that measure of whether the Bharat Jodo Yatra worked or not? Because the rest, frankly, it's great to speak to everyone, but it's just opinion. How will we measure at the end of this that was Bharat Jodo Yatra a hit or a flop?
Before I answer the question, Tamanna, I have to respond to the issue of inflation that my friend Tuhin mentioned, being a student of economics. Tuhin, you're right, inflation was higher during UP2 and you're forgetting one crucial element. So was the GDP. And if you look at the average of the GDP, then you look at where your performance has been, where you took us down to the first recession in India's parliamentary or political history. But Tamanna, the challenge for the Congress really will be to try and make all the build-up that is happening. This narrative. I think the Congress today is having a momentum. The Yatra is definitely going to be a huge fillip. The fact that you will have a president, whether it's somebody from the Gandhi family or non-Gandhi family, is going to be a story. And I can tell you it will have political ramifications. So the Congress seems to be definitely capturing the story that so far it has abandoned rather casually to the advantage of the BJP. Number two, and this is very crucial, that the Gujarat election and the Himachal election, the Congress should not take its eye off these prizes. I can tell you, I know a lot of people from Gujarat, and the BJP, that's the one thing that I believe I have learned from the BJP, and I congratulate them for that aggressive attitude, that they take their election very seriously. And even if there are front runners, they actually play as if they're losing. So they have the kind of the belligerent attitude of a challenger. I think the Congress gets hungry. You have a real story happening even in Gujarat, even as we talk.
And I think they have to get serious about elections. Sandip Ghose, what would be your parameter to know whether this yatra has worked or not? I mean, no one can deny that the opposition in this country needs to be strengthened for a vibrant democracy. You need to have a check and balance in a democratic nation. Do you think that the Congress revival is crucial, or what we're seeing right now with Nitish Kumar and him meeting a slew of non-Congress, non-BJP parties as the real challenger to the BJP?
I definitely think, Congress revival is very essential, even for putting together an opposition unity. To that extent, this thing, if Congress is able to reestablish itself as the first among equals within the opposition spectrum, that is very desirable. But my yardstick would be if there are more people like Aishwarya Mahadev get enthused by this to come and join the Congress, add to its ranks, give more energy, vision, and direction to Congress. I'm not worried about whether Congress's seat tally goes up substantially just now. I wouldn't be too worried about what they do in Gujarat or Himachal Pradesh. But if the organization gets regalvanized, where people see something of a hope and future in that organization, I think that will be a great achievement.
Yep. All right. So we'll wait and see. The yatra technically actually will kick off tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. That will be day one. It'll be interesting to see whether it sustains that kind of excitement and interest. So a space to watch. Thank you to all of you for joining us today on The Lead Story on Beyond the Headlines. But non-BJP